What if the safest place in your life, your own home, become the place where the truth was buried? This is the case that shocked Ireland. A young mother, a quiet home in the countryside, and a husband who went on a national television before he was exposed. So, what really happened to Rachel O'Reilly? And how did one house become the center of carefully hidden crime? Rachel was 33 years old. She was a mother of two young boys. She worked as a real estate agent. Her life revolved around homes, helping families find them, building future inside them. She lived in a quiet area in Knoll, County Dublin, with her husband, Joe O'Reilly. To the outside world, they looked perfect, stable, normal, happy. But behind that image, something was already breaking. On a morning in October 2004, everything changed. Joe made a call to emergency services. He said he found Rachel at the bottom of the stairs. Unresponsive, he described it as an accident, a fall, a tragic, sudden moment inside their home. Now, think about this. If someone falls down the stairs, you expect confusion, panic, chaos. But what if the story doesn't match the scene? When responders arrived, Rachel was already gone, but something didn't feel right. Her injuries were severe, too severe. Investigators began asking questions because this didn't look like a simple fall. Medical experts later confirmed something critical. Rachel had suffered multiple blunt force injuries, repeated impact, not just one fall. So now the question changed. Not what happened, but who did this? There were no signs of forced entry, no broken doors, no missing items, nothing to suggest an intruder. Which lead to one chilling possibility. This happened inside the home and the person responsible was already there. At first, Joe was not charged. He continued living his life, and then something unusual happened. He appeared on the Late Late Show, a national audience, millions of views. He spoke about Rachel, about loss, about that morning. But many people watching felt something strange. He looked calm, too calm. Let me ask you something. If you had just lost your partner, would you be able to sit on television and speak so composed? Or would something break through? That appearance stayed in people's mind because later it would take on a completely different meaning. Meanwhile, investigators kept digging, and this is where the case takes a major turn. They looked at technology, specifically mobile phone data. Joe had given a version of his movements. He said he was away from the house at a key time, but his phone told a different story. Cell tower records showed his phone connecting to masts near the home. At time, that contradicted his account. Now, think about this. Phones don't lie. They connect where they are. And this data placed him right where he said he wasn't. Investigators rebuilt the timeline, minute by minute, movement by movement, signal by signal. And slowly, the gap between his story and reality became impossible to ignore. But that wasn't the only issue. The scene inside the house was examined again, carefully, closely. Blood patterns, impact points, position of the body. Everything suggested a violent attack, not a fall. Rachel had been struck multiple times inside her own home. So now the case was clear. This was not an accident. This was murder. And the only person with both access and the conflicting story was Joe. In 2007, he was arrested and charged with Rachel's murder. The trial became one of the most closely watched in Ireland. The prosecution built a strong case. They focused on three key elements. First, the medical evidence. Experts confirmed Rachel's injuries could not be explained by a fall. Second, the crime scene. It showed signs of repeated violence. And third, the phone data. This was crucial because it didn't rely on memory or emotions or interpretation. It was technical, precise, cold, and it placed Joe at the scene at the exact time Rachel was attacked. The defense challenged this. They questioned the accuracy of mobile tracking. They suggested alternative possibilities. But the jury looked at everything together. Not just one piece, but the full picture. And that picture told one story. Joe was responsible. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. But even after the verdict, this case still raises questions. Why go on national television before being charged? Was it an attempt to control the narrative, to appear innocent, or did he believe he had already covered everything? Because here is the truth. What brought this case to justice was not just the violence. It was the details, the small things, the overlooked things, the digital traces. Without that phone data, the story could have stayed exactly as it began. A tragic accident, a fall down the stairs, a closed case. But instead, those signals told the truth and exposed what really happened inside that house. So now I want you to think about this. If there were no phone records, no technology, no deeper investigation, would anyone have questioned the story? Or would Rachel O'Reilly's death have been remembered or just another accident? Because sometimes the truth doesn't shout. It hides in silence, in data, in the smallest detail, waiting for someone to notice. And in this case, that detail changed everything. Thank you.
I think so. Where the murder happened was in the bedroom, which is the very last room of the house. So it's the room where you're least likely to bring someone you don't know because you're cornered. My view as well would be, and again it's just my view, it's not a police theory, it's just my own personal belief, is that she knew the person, because why else would you kill her? If it's a violent robbery, why go to the extreme of murdering the person unless they can identify him? And that's why we've talked about this and practically nothing else for the last 3 weeks. We just feel it's someone she would have known or someone she could have identified.